Hey guys, Thrasher here. It's a new month and that means it's time for a new tier list. Before we get into it, if you haven't hit the subscribe button down below, make sure to do that right now and let's talk about it. Okay, so before we start talking about the actual characters within the tier list themselves, I just want to mention that this is a sparking tier list. There are extreme characters that if we were to rank them as far as best characters in the game, they would be on this list. They wouldn't be at the very bottom of the list. They are better than some sparking units, but this is going to be sparking units only. Part of the reason for that is there are no extreme units that would be in the Z or S tier right now. So if you do want to look at extreme units that are good, there's Master Roshi, there's most of the newest Frieza Force units, there's Bardock, and they would all be somewhere in the A tier, depending on how you're using them. So just keep that in mind, and then let's go through the actual tier list now. Now, the bottom tier is what I call the D tier. These are the units that have no real value. They don't really bring anything to any quality team. They're not a unit that stands on its own well. They don't really do anything to help you in any way. You would not use them unless you absolutely have to. If you're a brand new character and for whatever reason one of these three units is one of the only three sparking characters that you have in the game, then you would use them. Otherwise, do not use them. And chances are, if you have any reasonable extreme units, you would use them over these. Next is the C tier. These are units who are definitely not good. I would not bring them unless I absolutely have to. They do have some value as far as Z ability in a couple cases, but they are going to lose almost every single neutral matchup except for one or two. The large majority of the time they're going to be at a heavy disadvantage. One thing I want to note here, and we will mention this a little more in a second, is that we see that Broly has fallen into this C tier, units that you really don't want to use. And that's just because he can't hold up to the current meta. He's a very selfish unit. He doesn't bring anything to a team really, and when it's one-on-one, him versus another unit that he doesn't have specific advantage over, they're almost always going to have him outstatted, or they're going to be able to beat him in a one-on-one fight in most cases. Next is the B tier. These are reasonably good filler units. I wouldn't bring them as one of my first three combatants, but I can use them as sort of a Z ability bench unit that can be brought into combat if I need to beat someone with type advantage in some way. Next is the A tier. These are reasonably good units that could be on your PvP combat team, so your initial three units that you're building your team around, but they're not your first choice. So they normally have reasonably good stats. They can win a fair amount of neutral matchups. The big issue here is they just don't bring the either the damage or the utility that a lot of the units in upper tiers are about to bring when you see them in a second. A big thing to note here is we see again Pan has moved up in the tier list. She's in the A tier now, and she's almost borderline S tier just because her key restore speed is so incredibly high and she has so many different units that can buff her up at this point. She can actually be very powerful in PvP. Next is the S tier. These are very good high quality units you'll use on PvP teams. Chances are they will be in your three combat units almost always, assuming that they are within the tag that you're building your team around. The only issue is they don't bring the game-breaking either mechanic or synergy that the characters in the Z and Z- tier are going to bring. So from here on out, every unit is going to be ranked in order. Everything up to the S tier was simply units are all similar in their power and their ability to help in PvP within the tier. So there was no specific order to any unit in the S tier. There was no specific order to any unit that was in the A tier. But when we get to the next tier, which is Z-, they will be in order. So there's 6 more units. We're going to start at number 6. And number 6 is Goten. So a lot of people are going to ask, why is Goten in the Z- tier and Trunks is not? And that's pretty simply because Goten is strike based, and as I've stated in previous videos, strike is almost always going to overcome blast when it comes to actual combat. He brings 2 strike cards, which is extremely powerful for every team he's going to be on, and he synergizes immensely well with one of these Z tier units who is not the most broken character in the game, but when used with another one of the Z tier units who we'll talk about in a minute, becomes one of the most broken characters in the game. So overall, his synergies and his ability to blow through enemies allow him to slightly surpass Trunks, at least within the current meta. One more thing to mention about him, a lot of people don't like his main ability simply because it gets rid of a lot of blast cards. He is strike based. You don't really want to be using blast cards, and it increases your damage a lot. The problem that people are seeing with it is that, oh, well, you might miss your next move. That's true, but like I just said, you don't really want to be doing blast damage with him, and it allows you to clear out your field of cards so that way you can generate more. Okay, number 5 and the last unit in the Z- tier is Android 17. Android 17 still has a fantastic kit. He still does tons of blast damage. He's on one of the strongest tags in the game, or at least one of the top 3 strongest tags in Android. He brings a ton of utility with his green card. He's a very tanky unit overall, and there's nothing really new that needs to be said about him. He's a great unit. He's been a great unit for a long time. I think because of the way he's kitted out, he's going to scale for a reasonably long period of time, even from here on out. And that's really all we can say for him. So, number 4, and the first in the Z tier, Instant Transmission Super Saiyan Goku. He's been a staple unit for quite a while now. He's got the ability to dodge up to 2 Rising Rushes, which is insane. His Ki Restore speed, especially when coupled with using his green card, allows him to combo almost infinitely, and you can definitely combo until your Vanishing Gauge is back up. So that makes him an immensely powerful unit. The only reason that he's not higher on this list is because the 3 units above him are borderline broken. The number 1 unit definitely is. So let's go to number 3. Number 3 is Super Saiyan 2 Gohan. Because of the new best unit in the game, as well as Goten and Trunks, he has so many synergies now that almost whatever team you put him on, he's going to become a monster. Here's how this works. If you have a team with 2 units and Gohan, he's got reasonable synergy. Those first 2 units die, Gohan is your last unit left, and the opponent isn't completely at full health, there's a good chance you're just going to walk through that opponent. When he's the last unit, he just has too much Ki Restore speed, he has too much damage, and he actually probably has too much health, even if you take a couple hits. Okay, number 2, Bardock. Bardock has been an amazing unit since he came out. He finally got dethroned, in my opinion. He still does a ton of damage. He has a massive amount of health. He can lock units in so they can't switch out if you're going to Rising Rush, which is a fantastic ability. The only reason that he's no longer number 1 is because the next unit is straight up broken. So let's get on to number 1. Android 16. He is the tankiest unit in the game. He has the second most health. He has top 3 blast and strike defense. He can take so much punishment, it's unreal. He does a very good amount of strike damage. He has 2 strike cards, which works extremely well on the Super Saiyan 2 Gohan team, which is the team you're going to want to put him on if you have that unit. Because his self-destruct, which will one-shot pretty much any unit in the game, will also make Gohan an unkillable monster. It will increase his Ki Restore speed by 50% for 20 counts, and in that 20 counts, as long as you have a fair amount of strike cards in your deck, which you will, even with only the Super Saiyan 2 Gohan and the Android 16, that puts you at 6, not even including whoever your 3rd unit is, you are going to absolutely annihilate at least 2 opponents. So then all you have to do at that point is finish off 1 opponent. And outside of that, if we go back to his tankiness, when he switches into a cover change, he gets cover change damage reduction by 50%, just like Piccolo does. So however much damage you were going to do to him, you'll do half of it. But here's the crazy thing. If you don't kill him while he's in that cover change damage reduction phase, at the end of it, he's going to get 50% of the damage he took back as health, so he's only going to take 25% damage if you don't kill him. So essentially, he's going to damage sponge for your whole team while the match goes on. Once you've whittled your opponent down, you wait until they throw out a character who's reasonably powerful, and then you self-destruct with your Android 16, taking out that unit. Your Android 16 is now gone, and then your Gohan absolutely wipes their team. That's game over. In fact, this combo is so strong that there are multiple high-level YouTubers and PvPers that have said they need to nerf it. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think that it will be taken care of in a fairly short period of time here. We have probably another banner coming out very soon. But regardless, that's where the tier list stands right now. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. What do you think I should change? What do you think I missed? What do you think is wrong? That's really all there is to this video. If you like this content, make sure to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one.